Beyond the Forecast with Grant Tosterud, the science of weather in New Mexico. What makes the land of enchantment so unique? To understand, let's go Beyond the Forecast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Forecast, where we get a chance to dive deep into the science of New Mexico's weather. I'm Chief Meteorologist Grant Tosterud, joined today with Meteorologist Josh Redwine. And Josh, today's episode is a really interesting one, a historic rainfall event that some parts of New Mexico might remember pretty well.
Yeah, it happened not too long ago, and it was an event, to say the least.
A perfect storm, essentially. You had all the right ingredients come together at unfortunately over the right spot to create some pretty historic flooding. Of course, we're talking about the Roswell flooding that occurred in October of 2024. Before we get into just how much rain we've seen, or they saw, let's see how much rain they typically see on an average year. Let's take a look at weather graphics right now.
Yeah, so typically on an average October, we see 1.33 inches of rainfall. And as a year, we see a little over 11 and a half inches at 11.63 there. But in 2024, we did see 5.98 inches, almost 6 inches of rainfall just in the month of October.
Yep.
And what's crazy is that is 51% of what they see in a year as a whole.
Yeah.
So, and that's just happened over a couple of days.
Yeah, exactly. Most of that rain fell just a couple of days, like Josh said. And there's no other month that even averages that close to rainfall in 1 month alone. Yeah. So pretty remarkable rainfall event down in the Roswell area. This is all over the month of October, but there's really specifically just a couple of days we're really looking at during the month of October that this event occurred. And what we're really looking at here is going to be about the 19th through the 20th, when you just had the perfect setup for this heavy rainfall event over the Roswell area. And we're going to go through the ingredients here to explain what led up to this essentially perfect storm to develop over the Roswell area. So first ingredient was the low-level moisture. You've got all this humidity, these dew points that were streaming in from the Gulf of Mexico with this strong southeasterly wind that brought all of that moisture up into the eastern part of the state. And brought dew points, I believe, up into the 60s and even 70s during that day of the first rainfall event.
Yeah, and then we also had that very, very strong low-pressure system that set up just to the western portions of the state, and that just allowed those storms to just barrel right into that Roswell area. I mean, across the state as a whole, we saw very, very heavy rainfall that day, but that low pressure, it just set up right in the perfect position to where all of those storms, they just, once they moved over the mountains there, the Sacramento Mountains and the Southern Mountains, they just like fired up even more as they moved closer and closer to Roswell.
Yeah, that's such a good point. These storms kept going and going and going and going. A big reason was because of that low pressure system there. I think if you watch the weather regularly, we show you these low pressure systems all the time, and you know that when they are moving towards New Mexico, they're usually going to mean active weather, and that's exactly what happened. We also got another factor in this perfect storm setup called upper air diffluence. What this means is that you have the air kind of lifting upwards over Roswell and splitting apart. The reason you have that air spreading apart in the upper levels is because you have that low pressure system approaching New Mexico, and then you have those upper level winds kind of curling out to the east. And when the wind direction goes in opposite directions like that, that causes the air to rise. And one of the big ingredients you need for thunderstorms to develop is rising air. So again, this is the third perfect ingredient that Roswell had to getting these showers and thunderstorms develop. But Josh, there was one more ingredient.
Yeah, so we also had that stationary front that just set up right along eastern portions of the state. And so that stationary front is pretty much just like it sounds. It just sits there and brings in round after round after round of those showers and storms. And now Roswell, they're not, They have storms regularly, so it's not like out of the ordinary for this to happen. But for all of these things to line up so perfectly, all four of these factors, and it just set it up for an amazing storm, but also some very tragic flooding.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was the combination of the strong synoptic scale forcing, which is you're looking at it on a large scale. We've got the low pressure system, that's your synoptic scale forcing. Large instability with all of that moisture in place, ample moisture, strong vertical wind shear, the wind speeds in the upper levels going in different directions, causing the rising of the air to create the favorable conditions for the development of thunderstorms over eastern southeastern New Mexico. And, a lot of the eastern part of the state saw multiple thunderstorms that day. It was just that Roswell happened to be in the wrong spot, essentially, to get just rounds of heavy, heavy rainfall over this one particular area. And it wasn't just Roswell proper either. There were areas right around town that also picked up some extremely heavy rainfall towards Dexter and Hagerman. So some pretty incredible setup here for this kind of extreme weather event to occur. And I think they called about a 1 in 500 year flooding event and kind of set up.
Which is astonishing.
Exactly. So we kind of explained to you now what the ingredients were for this severe weather setup for all the heavy rain. And when we come back, we're going to show you what the radar looked like, how long it rained in Roswell, and some of the impacts that they saw with this heavy rain. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Beyond the Forecast, where today we're diving into the science of a historic rainfall event in Roswell that occurred in 2024. Of course, we're talking about the October storm that moved through Roswell, multiple rounds of rain, Josh, that just dropped some incredible amounts of rainfall in a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it literally happened within 2 days with the majority of this rain. Over 5 3/4 of an inch fell within 5 hours.
Yeah, pretty incredible. So here we've got the radar loop of what it looked like that day in Roswell. If you tuned in earlier, you saw the 4 ingredients that led to the setup of this heavy rainfall. And we're going to take a look at the radar loop right now of southeastern New Mexico. In fact, you're going to see Arizona and New Mexico here, showing the low pressure system that we talked about that set up over the state of Arizona. And then on the tail end of that, over parts of New Mexico, you get these lines of convection or thunderstorms to develop across the eastern part of the state. All right, so here you can see how those thunderstorms developed through the afternoon. Of course, Roswell is there in southeastern New Mexico. This is a loop from October 19th through the 20th. So this is over 24 hours of radar imagery. What I like about this is, again, you can see the center of circulation with the low pressure system we were talking about out over Arizona. And then all of those factors, those 4 different factors we were talking about just minutes ago, coming together in eastern parts of the state to create that line of thunderstorms you see on this radar loop.
Yeah, absolutely. You can even see as those showers, those storms, you can see them kind of building just to like the southern portions of the state. And as they really move across those more mountainous regions, they kind of intensify. You could see the colors just getting so much brighter and so much heavier. And then you can see they just continue to sit right there, right over Roswell, right over eastern New Mexico, and just continually are dropping so much rain.
This is something an event called, or meteorologists call, training of thunderstorms. It sounds just like what you think it is, a train. It goes over the same area over and over and over again. So we had these training of storms over the Roswell area that caused it to drop some pretty incredible rainfall amounts. Of course, it rained for a few hours there, but then you just got these intense thunderstorms that were producing some incredible rainfall amounts, even just within an hour or so. So to get a look at what it looked like on the ground now, let's take a look at another video. This is from the Chaves County Sheriff, Mike Harrington, who is stranded on the top of his police car during this historic rainfall event.
I am sitting on the roof of my cop car, my police truck. I am completely surrounded by water at this time. So as you can see down here, that is the side of my truck, and there are multiple vehicles. Came into this not expecting that much water, and before I know it, I was swept off into this. Multiple vehicles have been swept away as well. So to all of you in Chaves County, please stay at home. Do not get out. Those people here on the west side of Roswell, a lot of their houses are flooded and their cars are flooded. So it's shaking just a little bit because it's a little bit chilly out here. But I am sitting on top of my vehicle, and a couple people who were walking through the water came and sat here with me. So everyone out here in this, be careful, be safe, and I'm just waiting until the water goes down. All right. Talk to you after a while.
I mean, this is the definition of a flash flooding event. Even the sheriff wasn't prepared for how quickly that water rose in Roswell. And most of this fell within about a 6 to 10 hour period from October 19th through October 20th. Again, this is kind of a late evening into the very early morning hours event. So Josh, how much rain exactly fell? We'll take a look at the weather graphics here.
Yeah. So in Roswell that day, we did see 5.79 inches falling. That 5.67 of that fell within just 5 hours. So on that day, just October 19th as a whole, 5.78 inches. So the majority of that fell on that October 19th, bringing us 50% of that annual rainfall. So very, very significant amounts of rain. And that's why we saw that flash flooding, just because it happened so extremely quickly. And the town itself just, was not prepared for it. I mean, it's hard to be prepared for amounts of rain like that.
No infrastructure's built for that.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you can say it over and over again, like the infrastructure wasn't there. But there is no infrastructure at all that
for
is
this much
prepared
water.
For this much at that quick of amount of time.
Exactly. And almost all of that fell entirely on the 19th, from early that evening all the way until late at night. Only an additional 100th of an inch of rain fell shortly after midnight on the 20th, but obviously we were still dealing with the impacts of all of that, the water runoff and all of the flooding. And usually I'm not a big fan of talking about all-time daily precipitation records because, especially here in New Mexico, when we can go a long time without seeing rain, sometimes those records for a day are maybe a couple hundredths of an inch of rain. So it doesn't really stand out when you get 500ths of an inch of rain and you're setting an all-time daily precipitation record. But I think this is a pretty important precipitation record that they set, because I would be shocked to see this beat ever again.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I could not see this being beat just because, like you said earlier in the show, 1 in a 500-year storm.
Yeah, and the only other day to pick up rainfall in the month of October was the 18th, when they picked up some measurable rain as well. So it's really only these 3 days in the entire month of October that they got rainfall at all.
Yeah.
So it kind of, you look at the record book sometimes and you can see how a month did on rainfall. And if we were to look at the October rainfall for Roswell now, you're going to see that they're ending well above average. But if you go in and you do a little bit of research and look at exactly when that rain fell, anybody, especially down the road, is going to look back and see, wow, this all fell in almost one day.
Exactly. Like 5.79 inches in the entire month is impressive for Roswell, you know?
In half a year would be impressive.
Exactly. In half a year is impressive. That's over 4.5 inches above what they typically see for the month as a whole. So can't be surprised when we saw the flash flooding. Dry conditions up before that, and then it just all happens right at once.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. We also had a few reports around Roswell of some even higher rainfall totals. So this is the total that officially fell at the airport. This is what went down in the record books. But based on radar and some rain gauges from around town, there were a few other places that picked up as much as 10 inches of rain. So almost double what they picked up at the airport. And you can imagine the flooding. If we had gotten 8 to 10 inches of rain in Roswell proper, how much worse this flooding would have been. And according to some of the satellites, like we said, this really exceeded that 500-year storm threshold, meaning that, you might see this kind of rainfall event once in every 500 years. But even then, I think once ever is still too much.
I was like, this is a one-time thing that should only occur this one time.
Because this had some serious impacts. Of course, we saw the sheriff there stuck on his vehicle, caught in the flash flooding with this storm, with the series of storms and all the heavy rain. And Roswell's it's fairly flat down there. Yeah. So this water wasn't necessarily rushing, but it did fill up the little river they have in town. And that river overflowed and helped to create all this flash flooding. And like we said, the infrastructure wasn't built for this. So when you get that much water and rain as well on city streets, you're going to cause urban flooding. And it all just led to, unfortunately, the perfect storm. And this storm did have some serious consequences, from people getting trapped, injured, and unfortunately some deaths too. So when we come back here on Beyond the Forecast, we're going to go into the aftermath of this storm system and see what happened in the wake of all of this rain. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back again to Beyond the Forecast. We're breaking down the science of the historic Roswell rainfall event in October of 2024. Now, Josh, this was just an incredible series of storms that trained over the Roswell area, dropping some incredible amounts of rain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, during just this one day, it dropped so much rain and caused so many impacts. I mean, we saw lots of flash flooding. We saw deaths, unfortunately. And this wasn't just a one and done type of thing. Like, this lasted, like the impacts, the recovery lasted for several days, several weeks afterwards.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you get almost 6 inches of rain falling within just 6 hours in the Roswell area. So we sent one of our reporters, of course, down to the Roswell area to get a look to see what some of the impacts were from all of this rain. Let's take a look at this story from KRQE News 13 reporter Jessica Barron.
Good afternoon. Flooded with nearly 6 inches of rain in just 5 hours. Roswell now picking up the pieces after a massive weekend storm. And while the high water is gone, city leaders say there is still a danger. News 13's Jessica Barron is in downtown Roswell with how the city is working to assess that damage.
More than a day after the storm rolled through here, Roswell, you can still see so much of the damage left behind. If you look down, you can still see one truck that's stuck here in the spring water. And then if you look to the other side, you can see multiple cars stacked on top of the bridge. People we spoke to today say they've never seen a storm like this before.
This was unlike any other time that we've seen.
Shock and disbelief in Roswell as people look over the damage caused by a major flash flood Saturday night into Sunday morning. While many are trying to clean up or salvage what's left, Adan Leiva is among those who say it's hard to believe what happened.
This is sad. This is sad. We have a bunch of businesses. Our entrance to our, history, art, and everything, it just got ruined. So it is pretty sad. It is pretty sad to see this.
The storm brought as much as 7 inches of rain to some areas around Roswell, making it the wettest day in the city's recorded history. The New Mexico National Guard says floodwaters carried cars away, leading to 2 deaths and more than 500 rescues. Today, the Guard says it's using the break in weather to determine what all is damaged.
The water has receded a lot. Actually, in the last 2 days, it's receded quite a bit. There is toward the east of town where we're going to start to assess now that there is a possibility of the Pecos River kind of going over a little bit. So we're assessing that damage.
Although the water's gone down, the city is asking people to stay off the roads as much as possible because of lingering safety concerns.
The flooding, to the extent and force that we had, affects bridges that are part of our street system and can affect their structural integrity and safety. So we want people to stay off those bridges.
Despite the damage for a historic storm, people in Roswell are staying optimistic, focusing on recovering.
What's to come? We're going to get back up on our feet. You know what I mean? This community is very, very tight, and we're gonna come up on top.
So really some incredible, horrible impacts from all of this flooding. And you could see just the impact of all of the water too. I mean, it just has incredible force.
It's so fascinating to see, but also so scary at the same point. Like she said in there, over 500 rescues. Like what?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Right, and that's what happens exactly when that water rises so fast. So, like you said, and like Jessica said, more than 500 people rescued during the flash flooding in Roswell. Unfortunately, 2 people did die since they were trapped in one of the cars that got caught in the flash flooding in the water. 40 people were taken to the hospital for their injuries. I mean, this is just one of those storms too that it's hard to even predict for these kinds of storms, because we had an idea that day. I remember knowing that there was going to be a big rainfall event like this somewhere in eastern New Mexico, but it's hard and it's even impossible for forecast models or for us to predict exactly and how much exactly rainfall is going to fall in these areas.
Exactly. Like we said, 1 in 500 year storm. Like, this is not something that we necessarily have every single thing. Like, we can't predict this. Like, this is something that is just so incredibly rare and so powerful that it's just like, in the moment, you have to take it in strides and go for it.
So what we can do, though, is to prepare you to know what to do in case it is flooding in the future. And, one thing we always say, and it's nice and easy to remember, is turn around, don't drown. If there's a flooded roadway or a sidewalk or anything like that, just turn around. That's going to be the safest thing to do because it doesn't take a lot of water to even to pick up your SUV or vehicle or even pickup and sweep it away. It's just 6 inches to a foot of rushing water can sweep a vehicle down the road. So it doesn't take a lot. And you'll also hear us talk about, too, these flood advisories, flood watches, and flood warnings that are sometimes issued during or before these events. So if we'll take a look at weather graphics again right now, we're going to tell you the difference between all three of those. So a flood advisory means that you need to be aware. If a flood advisory is issued for your area, your town, it means flooding is not expected to be bad enough for a warning, but it could cause some significant inconvenience. So we're talking about some minor street flooding, some urban flooding out there. The arroyos might fill up a little bit too, but for the most part, it's not going to be a life-threatening situation.
It's not going to be that impactful.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then so we also have a flood watch. That's like the next step up. So what you need to do, you need to be prepared for this. So these are when conditions are very favorable for flooding, like whenever we know that these storms are going to be coming in, and we're expecting to see very heavy amounts of rainfall. Now, it does not mean that flooding is going to occur, but it does mean that it is very, very possible.
Yeah, exactly. A flood watch will be issued before the event, and a flood warning is issued during it, or sometimes a flash flood warning. This means you need to take action right now, get to higher ground if necessary. Flooding is going to happen any moment or is already occurring, and that can be sudden and violent sometimes too, hence the flash flooding part as well. And here are some things you can do if you do get caught in some flash flooding, or you know there's going to be a flash flooding threat. Like we said, move to higher ground. Can avoid walking through floodwaters.
Never drive through flooded waters, flooded roadways, or anything like that.
Evacuate if instructed to do so. And one thing maybe people don't think about, watch for exposed electrical wires. If those wires are down and in the water is a great conductor of electricity, and that can cause some serious issues too. So remember that you can always stay up to date with on the weather by watching KRQE or by going to KRQE Now or going to KRQE.com. You can also find all of us meteorologists on social media. So please join us again next week for another episode of Beyond the Forecast.